Think fast. You wake up, still groggy, trying to remember if you're in a nightmare. But no, you're just living like a medieval peasant. The alarm clock, the sound of clucking chickens and pigs scratching themselves beside you. Literally beside you. Because you sleep on a dirt floor, in a room that serves as a bedroom, kitchen, stable, and makeshift bathroom. Your bed is a moldy straw sack that has hosted more generations of lice than members of your family. The smell is indescribable. A mix of fermented sweat, smoke from a fire that never goes out, aged urine, which could be yours, the dog's, or the goat's, and a hint of mold on the soaked wooden walls. There are no windows, just a hole in the roof that's supposed to ventilate the space, but serves better as an official entry point for mosquitoes, cold air, and occasionally bird droppings. You slept in the same clothes as the day before, and the day before that, and the one before that, because let's face it, no one in your reality has a change of clothes. The garments are damp from the dew that seeped in overnight, itch incessantly, and smell as if they'd been forgotten in a bucket of sour milk for a week. You wake up with a heavy body. It's not psychological fatigue. It's the kind of pain that comes from sleeping months without a mattress, with an S-shaped spine from so much digging, carrying, and bending. Your muscles don't ache from the gym. They ache from existing. You cough twice, feel a wheeze in your chest, and ignore it. After all, without antibiotics, without diagnosis, and without hope, coughing is just part of your medieval good morning. And yet, you can't stay lying down for even 5 more minutes. There's no snooze mode. There's no morning routine. There's the rising sun, and with it, the work that awaits you. You don't have time to complain, nor energy, nor freedom. The only certainty you have is that you need to get up and survive. Because in this life, even the luxury of dying from exhaustion is denied. First, you have to work until complete exhaustion. Forget everything you associate with breakfast. There's no warm bread, no coffee, not even a cup. What awaits you beside the extinguished fireplace is a grimy pot, with a crust stuck to the edges that no one has cleaned since the last winter solstice. Inside, slowly bubbles what's left of dinner, which in turn was already the leftover lunch, a miserable soup called pottage. Pottage is the medieval way of saying, throw everything that hasn't rotted into the pot and pray it boils enough to kill whatever's alive. It's an inconsistent mix of old oats, earthy-tasting roots, and muddy water that's been boiled and reused so many times it's lost the right to be called water. Sometimes you're lucky to find a piece of turnip, or on festive days, a slightly wilted piece of kale. But what you find more often are bugs, small insects floating on the surface, tiny larvae that take advantage of the lack of hygiene and the heat to make it their nursery. You try to pretend they're pieces of fennel. They're not. They move. And yet, you eat. The taste is non-existent. It's like swallowing cardboard porridge with a pinch of despair. But this soulless liquid is the only thing preventing your stomach from collapsing in on itself. And if you have bread to accompany it, don't expect softness. Medieval bread is hard as stone, cut with a dull knife, and loaded with stone particles from the mill. It grinds your teeth with every bite, but you chew anyway. Because it's that or nothing, literally. And of course, there are no utensils. You eat with your hand. The same one you used yesterday to chop wood, clean the corral, and scratch the lice from your scalp. Water to wash your hands? Only if you want to risk an intestinal infection. Because the water you have in the village looks clean, but carries a prize-winning combination of human feces, urine, bacteria, and remains of dead animals. There's no milk, no fresh fruit, nothing remotely nutritious. Just the same slop your ancestors have been eating for generations. Eating isn't pleasure. It's maintenance. It's like fueling a car with burnt oil and hoping it still runs 20 kilometers. You swallow, choke, swallow again, and thank God for another day when the food, at least, didn't kill you. Have you dressed today? Congratulations. A medieval peasant has too. The difference? They've been wearing the same clothes for at least 3 weeks, without washing, without changing, without options. And when I say same clothes, I'm not talking about a cotton t-shirt and comfortable jeans. I'm talking about a coarse wool or thick linen tunic smelling of smoke, mold, and fermented sweat. A garment that itches, irritates, and tears in the worst possible places. like the armpits and between the legs, and that no one, absolutely no one, would think of wearing twice in the modern world, let alone 40 times. There's no underwear, no panties, no bra. And yes, that applies to all genders. The clothing sticks to the skin like a second layer of discomfort. No refined seams, no precise measurements. It was hand-sewn, probably by someone in the family, and has already been adjusted 1,000 times with patches of dirty cloth. The concept of underwear doesn't even exist, and formal wear is simply the same tunic with a tighter piece of rope at the waist. The most interesting, or most disturbing thing is that this same clothing, besides everything else, is alive. Not metaphorically, truly alive. Fleas, lice, and bedbugs live in it. They hide in the seams, multiply in the folds of the fabric, and make your body a medieval buffet. Scratching your head until it bleeds is common. Scraping your legs with a stone to get rid of parasites too. And there's no point in washing. The water is dirty, the soap is a paste of ashes with animal fat, and the result is just a wet version of the same tragedy. And before you think, at least there must be decent footwear, think again. The shoes, if you're lucky enough to have a pair, are made of raw leather, flat-soled, without insoles, stitched with twine, and with the durability of a sandal made of wet cardboard. They don't protect from the cold, the rain, or the stones. They serve only to remind you with every step that the ground of the Middle Ages is a battlefield, and you're unarmed. The best part? You're still going to wear these clothes to work in the field, sleep on the floor, cook beside the fire, and serve as a repellent to other people, because the smell is a chemical weapon. The perfume of the 13th century? It's called existence. Don't even think about resting after that lice bath and coffee that tastes like tears. A medieval peasant's morning doesn't begin. It already runs you over. And the destination is always the same. The fields. An endless ocean of hard earth, mud, and stone, where you'll spend the next 12 to 14 hours of your life bent over, carrying weight, and praying it doesn't rain. Or worse, that it rains at the wrong time. You don't have time to stretch. Your body, already accustomed to chronic pain, no longer knows the difference between standing and dying slowly. You walk to the plantation without hydrating, because water is a luxury, and what you have might kill you faster than fatigue. The only liquid in your stomach is a weak beer that more resembles fermented bread broth. But it's that, or cholera. Hunger is still there. The watery pottage from breakfast has already been consumed and evaporated from your system in less than an hour of activity. But there's no snack, no medieval cereal bar, just the sound of the hoe tearing the earth and your knees cracking with each step. The work is manual, repetitive, brutal. Plowing, planting, harvesting, repeat, and no tractor, no tools with ergonomic handles. You hold a piece of wood with a crude blade attached with leather straps. Your fingers bleed in the first weeks, then develop calluses that never go away. Your nails are black. The earth gets into your eyes, nose, mouth. The cough is already part of the routine. The sun burns your neck until it turns to leather. And winter freezes your fingers until the pain feels normal. But do you know what exhausts you faster than the hoe? The simple fact that you already woke up exhausted. Because sleeping on a hard floor, waking up before the sun, and eating like a prisoner of war doesn't recharge anyone's energy. Exhaustion is constant. It's part of your identity. You don't have willpower. You have the need to survive. And no one will ask how you're feeling, because no one is feeling well. Medieval well-being is not having a fever and still being able to walk. If you're standing, then you're great. And now it's only mid-morning. Now imagine that after walking to the field, dying of thirst, and with legs heavy as stone, you finally arrive at your battle station, the farm. And there it is, your inseparable companion, your tool, your weapon against hunger, misery, and death by starvation. But don't expect to find a modern hoe. Not even something that remotely resembles comfortable to hold. What you have in your hands is the medieval equivalent of a poorly carved branch with a twisted iron blade tied with raw leather. This is your tool, your daily torture instrument. The handle is already cracked, full of splinters that pierce your calloused palms. The blade dull, rusty, and with all the weight poorly distributed, making you compensate with your whole body at every movement. Ergonomics? Non-existent. Comfort? A luxury reserved for the ghosts of kings. And that's not all. Every tool in the Middle Ages demanded more from your body than it returned in efficiency. Shovels that dig poorly, sickles that require improbable, angles and plows pulled by oxen that stumble more than they walk. You don't control the tool. It controls you. Violently. Every strike into the soil demands absurd effort. Your shoulder cracks, your lower back screams, your wrists feel like they're being crushed from within. There's no such thing as use your legs to avoid straining your back. You strain everything, all the time. The labor is so rudimentary it feels more like punishment than production. And the cruelest part, even when you do everything right, you still might not harvest anything, because the soil is unforgiving, the weather unpredictable, and hunger relentless. But you keep going, because if you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't eat, you can't work. And if you don't work, the feudal lord might still take away the little you have, land that you're not even the real owner of. The medieval tool is not just an instrument, it's a symbol, a constant reminder that you were born to suffer, and you'll die holding a piece of wood that was never meant to make your life easier. And if you think that's bad, just wait until lunchtime. After hours under the sun, with your back scorched and your hands throbbing with pain, the invisible clock of hunger begins to scream inside you. But in the Middle Ages, hunger wasn't an invitation to eat well. It was just another reminder that misery was the daily special, and every day's special. You sit in the shade of a twisted tree. You pull from the sweaty cloth tied around your waist a chipped wooden bowl. Inside, your lunch, an unnameable slop. It's pottage, they say, some sort of thick soup. But don't be fooled by the word soup, because there's no flavor, no good smell, and certainly no dignity. The contents are a mixture of muddy water, a few boiled leaves left over from the field, and maybe a forgotten bean at the bottom of the pot. If you're lucky, there might be a sliver of turnip or a piece of onion peel. If unlucky, there are larvae floating in it. But you eat it anyway, because you have no choice. The taste? A perfect combination of dirt, rust, and mold. The texture? Slimy, with lumps that resemble dried vomit. The temperature? Cold. Always cold. Because there's no time to heat anything in the field. And even if there were, fire would cost more than the meal itself. The craziest part? This is all you'll eat until nightfall. And the bread, which should be the foundation of your meal, doesn't help at all. It's as hard as a rock, dark as coal, and full of stone fragments from the mill, because the grinding stones shed chips into the flour. Eating this bread is like chewing wet sand with nails. Every bite might chip a tooth. And with no dentist around, that means living in pain forever. You chew slowly, not because you're savoring it, but because chewing fast means bleeding. Gums. You swallow without complaint, because even complaining might be seen as ungratefulness. After all, it could be worse. There could be nothing. And you return to work with your stomach full of sludge, the taste of defeat in your mouth, and the certainty that tomorrow's lunch will be the same, or worse. Thirst arrives like a slow torture. Your mouth is dry, your tongue feels like cracked leather, and every swallow scrapes your throat. After hours under the sun tilling soil with splintered wooden tools, your body screams for water. But in the medieval world, quenching your thirst might be the very mistake that sends you straight to the grave. The available water? From shallow wells, contaminated by everything medieval society discards. Human feces, animal carcasses, blood, and bile runoff from taverns and butcher shops. The smell of the bucket rising from the well already warns you. Don't drink. But you have no choice. And no, it's not an exaggeration. Historical studies show that in peasant villages, most cholera, dysentery, and typhoid outbreaks came directly from the source, literally. Sewage ran in open ditches, and often the same place people fetched water was where others dumped urine, childbirth fluids, infected bandages, and the waste of the dying. So what do? You drink, you close your eyes, you pray, you hope the metallic taste and greasy texture don't stay with you for the rest of the day. and that the stomachache to come isn't the kind that kills in 3 days. Those who could drank ale or weak beer. 5-year-old children drank beer like juice, not because it was fun, but because it was the less deadly option. Fermentation killed most bacteria, but even then, it was a thick liquid, often sour, that didn't quench thirst. It just numbed. The irony? Drinking water killed you slowly. Not drinking killed you too. Every sip was Russian roulette, with your own life. And when the fever arrived, so did the delirium. You'd tremble, groan, hallucinate in the bushes, and no one would help. Because everyone knew, another one died of thirst, by drinking. Thirst comes like slow torture. Your mouth is dry, your tongue rough like old leather, and every swallow feels like it's tearing your throat open. After hours under the sun, working the land with splintered wooden tools, your body screams for water. But in the medieval world, quenching your thirst might be the very mistake that kills you. The water available? Shallow wells contaminated by everything civilization discarded: human waste, animal carcasses, blood and bile runoff from taverns and butcher houses. The smell from the bucket rising from the well already warns you. Don't drink. But you don't have a choice. And no, it's not an exaggeration. Historical records show that, in peasant villages, most outbreaks of cholera, dysentery, and typhoid came straight from the source, literally. Sewage ran in open ditches, and often the same water source people drank from was also where they dumped urine, afterbirth, and infected waste. So what do? You drink. You close your eyes. You pray. You hope the metallic taste and greasy texture won't linger for the rest of the day, and that the stomach pain to come isn't the kind that kills you in 3 days. Those who could drank ale or weak beer. Even 5-year-old children drank beer like juice. Not because it was fun, but because it was the least deadly option. Fermentation killed most bacteria. But even so, it was a thick liquid, often sour, that didn't quench thirst, just numbed. The irony? Drinking water killed you slowly. Not drinking also killed you. Every sip was Russian roulette with your life, and when the fever hit, the delirium followed. You'd shake, groan, hallucinate in the bushes, and no one would do anything. Because everyone knew another one died of thirst by drinking. In the Middle Ages, getting sick wasn't just inconvenient. It was a verdict. A grim warning that your time on this earth might be coming to an end. A simple sneeze could be the first sign of something no one knew how to diagnose, let alone cure. You wake up with a fever, a headache. Your body is heavy. Your throat is inflamed. In the modern world, that might mean rest, ibuprofen, and some tea. In the medieval world, it means bloodletting, literally. The healer, if there's one nearby, grabs a rusty blade and cuts your arm to balance the humors. Yes, the 4 humors were the foundation of medieval medicine: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. And any symptom was interpreted as an imbalance of these fluids. Too agitated? Remove blood. Too sluggish? More bile needs to go. Fever? Apply leeches. Stomach pain? Get ready to drink mercury. Most cures killed faster than the disease. Leeches sucked you into total weakness. Vinegar enemas burned your insides. And the belief that baths opened the pores to disease led to people avoiding clean water, sometimes for months. Your feverish, filthy body would rot from the inside, out slowly. And if the illness wasn't enough, isolation was cruel. The gravely ill were placed in dark rooms, alone, with nothing but a bucket and maybe a piece of stale bread. There was no comfort, no hope. If you worsened, it was God's will. If you improved, it was a miracle. In truth, it was just luck. Pure luck. Medicine back then didn't understand infection, viruses, or hygiene. Deaths were accompanied by superstitious rituals, desperate prayers, amulets hung around the neck, bitter root potions. But deep down, everyone knew. If you got sick, prepare the coffin, because the earth is already being turned to receive you. Imagine lying down at night after an entire day of digging the earth with your hands under the scorching sun, with an empty stomach and a body covered in sweat and filth. You don't enter a room with a soft mattress, clean pillows, and a cozy blanket. You lie on a dirt floor, or on a wooden plank covered in straw infested with lice. The smell is unbearable. There's no ventilation. Everyone sleeps in the same space: parents, children, and sometimes even animals. The air is heavy, humid, filled with the stench of urine, excrement, and days of accumulated sweat. There's no privacy, no silence, only snores, coughs, groans of pain, drunks yelling in the street, and suspicious footsteps in the dark. And the fear. Oh, the fear. Because when the sun goes down, the medieval world transforms. Thieves, bandits, drunk and starving soldiers. A sound outside could mean your door, made of rotting wood, is about to be broken down, that your few belongings will be stolen, that your daughter will be taken. That's why many slept with one eye open and a knife under the blanket. Real. Rest was a luxury. Deep sleep was a risk. The night was dangerous. And even if no one broke in, the environment itself was the enemy. Rats chewing through your belongings, fleas covering your skin with bites, lice leaving your scalp raw and bleeding. And dreams. Often nightmares. Because it wasn't just your body carrying pain, it was your mind. The weight of knowing that tomorrow would bring more work, more hunger, more illness, more punishment. In the Middle Ages, sleep wasn't comforting. It was merely an uncomfortable pause between two torments. If you think medieval childhood was full of forest adventures, castles, and fairy tales, you're completely mistaken. Being a child in those times was, at best, a sentence of early suffering. At worst, a countdown to death. Let's start with the numbers. 30% of children died before the age of 5. The causes: disease, hunger, accidents, abuse. There were no vaccines, no antibiotics, no hygiene, no real sense of childcare. Babies got sick easily, and mothers often mentally prepared themselves to bury their children before they even learned to walk. By age 7, if you were still alive, you were already considered ready for work. That meant waking up before sunrise, carrying heavy loads, taking care of animals, planting, harvesting, cleaning excrement, and handling sharp tools with no safety whatsoever, all under strict orders and physical punishment. A slap on the wrist was light compared to what many suffered from sticks, belts, or even whips. Play? Rare. And almost always involved running through mud, mimicking adults, or in darker cases, torturing animals. Not because they were evil, but because that's what they saw every day. Violence and numbness as the norm. If you didn't toughen up young, you didn't survive. Education? Only noble children had access to any form of instruction. And even then, nothing like we know today. The rest grew up illiterate, unable to count or write their names. They learned what they saw: fear, blind obedience, and silent suffering. Girls were even less fortunate. Many were promised in marriage before their first period. By age 12, a girl could be forced to marry a much older man, and from there, her childhood became motherhood, or tragedy. Being a child in the Middle Ages meant living with death constantly at your back. If you survived, you became an adult. But the price was having your soul crushed before you ever understood what hope meant. Imagine waking up with a fever, body aches, vomiting, and a cough that feels like it's tearing your lungs apart. Today, that means antibiotics, rest, and a doctor. In the Middle Ages, it meant preparing to die, slowly, in agony, surrounded by people praying more than treating. Medieval medicine was a nightmare disguised as science. Doctors believed the body was governed by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you were sick, the explanation was simple: your fluids were imbalanced. The treatment? Bloodletting, cupping, forced vomiting, or leeches to release excess blood. You might laugh at that today, but the consequences were brutal. Already weak, the patient was forced to lose even more blood, which only sped up death. Worse, still, doctors didn't wash their hands or instruments. That turned even a simple tooth extraction into a death sentence by infection. And if you think that's bad, wait until you meet the bubonic plague. Between 1347 and 1351, the Black Death wiped out around 50% of Europe's population. The disease progressed quickly. It began with a fever, followed by dark swellings on the skin, called buboes. And within a week, the person would die choking on their own blood. Doctors wore beaked masks stuffed with herbs, thinking the stench in the air caused the disease. It did nothing. Hospitals were worse than the streets, dirty, dark places without sanitation or isolation. People with different diseases were piled into makeshift beds, with urine and blood soaking the floor. Nurses were often well-meaning monks, but completely untrained. And if you were poor, which most were, you didn't even get this level of care. The sick were abandoned at home or taken to die in remote areas, like walking plagues. There was no compassion, no cure, only fear and superstition. When the sun went down in the Middle Ages, darkness wasn't just the absence of light, it was the beginning of terror. For a medieval peasant, night was a daily enemy. There were no streetlights, no lanterns, no electricity. Villages were swallowed by pitch blackness, where every sound felt like a whisper from beyond, and every shadow could hide a thief, a wild beast, or something worse. The greatest fear? The supernatural. People truly believed witches, demons, spirits, and cursed creatures roamed freely at night. Wolves howling in the distance chilled the blood, and stories of vampires and the undead were passed around as if they were facts. Sleeping with a candle lit was common, not to see, but to keep evil spirits away. But spiritual fear was only half the problem. Temperatures would plummet, and peasant houses had no insulation, no glass windows, no decent fireplaces. Walls were made of mud and straw, floors were dirt. Blankets were rare, mattresses were hay, and sharing your bed with others, sometimes even animals, was the only way to avoid freezing to death. It wasn't comfort, it was survival. And if you think sleep was a moment of peace, think again. At any moment, thieves or raiders could storm the village. Security was nearly non-existent. There was no night watch, just old men called night guards, who rarely stopped anything. And to make matters worse, fires were common, caused by candles, forgotten embers, or pure negligence. Since houses were built from wood and straw, a single mistake could burn the whole village to ashes. And then came the church bells. If they rang at night, it was a clear sign. Someone had died, or something terrible was about to happen. For many, that sound in the middle of the dark was a reminder that life in the Middle Ages was fragile, frightening, and almost always short.